On Friday morning, the Spanish Interior Ministry published a number. 49,000 people had crossed into Ceuta in the previous 24 hours. Ceuta is a Spanish city that sits on the coast of North Africa. 20 square kilometers. Population 83,000. So the Spanish government had just announced that, overnight, a crowd well over half the size of the city had walked and swum in through its border. And then the statement came down. No correction, no explanation, just deleted. That's where this story actually starts. Not in the water, in what got said about the water, and how fast it changed. Thursday night, people started moving at Tarajal, the crossing where the border fence runs down the hillside and out into the sea. Most of them didn't touch the fence. They went into the water and swam around the end of the breakwater, and came up onto a Spanish beach on the other side. The footage from that night is mostly young men, soaked through, walking up into a residential neighborhood at 3 in the morning while the city slept. By Friday afternoon, the estimates had climbed to around 60,000. Roughly 70% of everybody who lives there. Ceuta's president, Juan Jesus Vivas, went on the radio and called it a situation of absolute humanitarian and social emergency, and asked Madrid to declare a national emergency. He tried to put it in numbers the mainland might actually feel. Scaled to the rest of Spain, he said, this is like 1 million people entering the country at once. And he'd been warning about it for days. Not thousands, 300 a day, quietly, for most of the week. Enough to have flooded the city's social services before Thursday ever happened. Nobody outside Ceuta was listening, because 300 people isn't footage. Now watch the death toll. Thursday, 9 dead. By Friday morning, 24, then 34, then 57. People who drowned in the dark, and people crushed against the breakwater trying to climb around it in a crowd, the number more than sextupled in about a day and a half. Not because anything new happened out there, because that's how long it takes to find people. Here's the part that should stop you. This has already happened. Almost exactly. May 2021. Spain quietly allowed the leader of the Polisario Front, the movement contesting Morocco's claim to Western Sahara, into a Spanish hospital for treatment under a false name. Morocco found out, and Morocco was furious. A few weeks later, the Moroccan officers stationed at the Ceuta border relaxed their controls. Around 8,000 people walked and swam across in 2 days. 1,500 of them were children. Spain called it a crisis. It wasn't really a crisis. It was a message, and everybody involved understood it as one. It also worked. The diplomatic freeze only thawed the following year, when Spain publicly reversed its position and endorsed Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara, a shift Madrid had resisted for decades. 8,000 people crossed a border, a fifth of them children, and the result was a change in Spanish foreign policy over a territorial dispute 2,000 kilometers to the south. That wasn't the first time either. In 2002, the two countries put troops on an uninhabited rock the size of a football pitch off the Ceuta coast, over goats and a flag, and had to be talked down by American diplomats. Morocco has never accepted that Ceuta and Melilla are Spanish. It considers them occupied and says so openly. And those two cities are the European Union's only land borders with Africa, which means every dispute between Rabat and Madrid has a pressure valve built into it. So when you look at this week, ask the question the coverage isn't asking. Not why did they come? Who benefits from this footage existing? Spain's foreign ministry insists relations with Morocco are excellent, and denies this has anything to do with Spain warming up to Algeria, Morocco's regional rival, 10 days earlier. Morocco's ambassador in Madrid says the situation is not wanted by the Kingdom of Morocco. The Spanish Interior Ministry blames trafficking networks for spreading news of a court ruling on Moroccan social media. Officially, nobody made this happen. It just did. Again, the ruling is real, and it matters. On the 29th of June, Spain's Supreme Court looked at a practice the civil guard had used for years. Someone gets over the fence, gets caught, gets walked straight back through a gate to Morocco. No paperwork, no asylum interview, no name recorded. That was legal, narrowly, because the law covered people who'd crossed a physical barrier built to stop them. The court looked at the swimmers and asked, what barrier? A man swimming around the end of a breakwater hasn't climbed anything, so the law allowing summary returns doesn't reach him. Pull him out of the water, and he's a person on Spanish soil with the right to be processed like one. The ruling did not legalize irregular entry. It did not guarantee anybody could stay. It said, you have to do the paperwork. But by the time that traveled across Moroccan social media, it had become something much simpler and much more powerful. If you swim, they can't send you back. That's not what the court said. It's what people heard. And you cannot really blame a 20-year-old in a country where 37% of people his age cannot find work for acting on the version he was given. June 2022. Melilla, Spain's other African city, 140 miles down the coast. Around 2,000 people went at the fence at once. Moroccan and Spanish forces met them at a walled crossing point with no way back out of it. Morocco acknowledged 23 dead. The Moroccan Human Rights Association counted at least 27, with more than 70 still missing today. Caminando Fronteras, a Spanish charity that tracks these deaths by answering phone calls from families, put the figure as high as 37. The photographs from that morning show bodies laid out on concrete in a courtyard, while officers walk between them. Of the 2,134 got in and filed asylum claims. 470 who had already reached Spanish soil were handed straight back over. 4 years on, nobody has been held responsible for any of it. There was an inquiry. There were resolutions. There was nothing. That's the thing about these events. They generate enormous noise and almost no consequence, so now watch what this week produced. Spain sent the army to Ceuta. The Prime Minister flew in for the afternoon. The Interior Ministry announced that more than 25,000 people had already been returned to Morocco at a rate of 150 people per minute. 150 a minute. Whatever that process is, it does not involve asking anyone their name. The leader of Vox called it an invasion, and blamed the Prime Minister's plan to legalize undocumented migrants for provoking it. The leader of the mainstream conservative opposition called it a national security failure the government refuses to admit. Italy's prime minister threatened to suspend Schengen and remove Spain from Europe's free travel zone. Spain summoned the Italian ambassador over it. France announced it was reinforcing its own border with Spain. The White House put out a statement telling Europe this is what its policies get you. All of that aimed at a crowd that had mostly already been sent home. Because a border crisis is the most useful footage in politics. Everybody points at it and says the thing they were going to say anyway. Nobody has to change a single position to use it. Here's the statistic that was sitting in a public Interior Ministry document available to every one of those politicians while they were posting. Irregular arrivals to Spain in the first 6 months of 2026, 12,138. The same 6 months last year, 17,990, down about a third. Nationally, this year, and in April, Spain did the opposite of everything Europe is doing right now. It opened a 10-week window for undocumented people already living in the country to apply for legal status. Residence, work permit, healthcare, social security. The government estimated 500,000 would come forward. 1.2 million did. More than double the projection. 2/3 of them Latin American. Most of them people who'd been in Spain for years already, cleaning apartments, caring for the elderly, picking fruit in Murcia and Almeria, who stepped into the daylight the moment there was a form to fill in. The government thought it was legalizing 500,000 people. What it actually ran was a census of a hidden country living inside its own. That was 5 weeks ago. It didn't trend anywhere. Two things are true about Ceuta this week, and they don't cancel each other out. 83,000 people had a crowd the size of their own city arrive overnight. Their schools, their clinic, their police force were never built for it. The shelters for unaccompanied children there are already running at 16 times the capacity they were designed for. That is a real thing to be frightened of. Dismissing it is how you get Torre Pacheco, the Spanish farming town that spent 3 days rioting last summer after a pensioner was attacked, and dozens of people drowned or were crushed in the same 18 kilometers of coastline, most of them under 25. This year alone, more than 1,300 people have died trying to reach Spain. 129 of them children, both of those, at once, in the same place. By Monday, the army stands down, the returns finish, the politicians move to whatever comes next, the fence stays. Morocco still wants the city back. Spain still needs the workers. Nobody will have signed anything, and nothing will have been decided. And somewhere in an office in Ceuta, days after the cameras leave, someone will still be revising the death toll upward, because that's the only number in this story that was never about politics in the first place. You survived the video till the very end. Subscribe to our channel for more such videos.